I'm here with Bishop O'Connell, author of The Stolen, an American fairy tale. Hi Bishop, can you tell us about your first novel?
It is a modernization of classic fairy tales that I wanted to take what people had thought of as being fairy tales and elves and all of that, and I put them alongside humanity and had them evolve with humanity, and I like the what if that came from that. How would being that close to humanity for so long shape them so they would naturally evolve and progress with humanity too? So magic is great, but when it makes more sense to use technology, they would. So why would you cast a spell when you can use a cell phone? Things like that. So they use guns, they have sports cars, they own nightclubs. I wanted to make a true urban fantasy or an urban fairy tale.
What's an American fairy tale?
That's actually something you start to learn a little bit more about in the second book. What I wanted to do was, since the United States is really a nation of other cultures, everybody here, obviously with the exception of Native Americans, came from somewhere else, and we all brought something with us. The first book focuses very heavily on the Irish lore, which I'm Irish, I'm very proud of that. And it's based in New England, so it has a lot of Irish impact, but the other books, the second book, The Forgotten, you start to see the other cultures that built America pulled into it. There's some Russian fairies, there are Welsh, German, Native American spirits start making appearances. I truly wanted it to be an American fairy tale, and like America, it's an amalgam. It's a melting pot. It is all sorts of cultures come together.
Do you have a favorite fairy tale?
Mine actually, a lot of them surround a lot of the traditional Irish tales. I really like the story of Finn McCool and the Salmon of Wisdom. And I like it because it is happenstance. He gains all this wisdom by accident. That the man who catches the salmon is preparing it to eat it and tells him to leave it alone and not do anything to it. And that he's got to eat it because he caught it, and he walks off, and Finn goes to pull it off of the spit and burns his finger and sucks his finger and gets enough of the salmon that he gains the wisdom. And I love that kind of play in things. I like happenstance and irony.
Why do you think fairy tales appeal to people of all ages?
I think fairies, and for me specifically, I think fairies appeal to people because unlike a lot of other fantastical creatures like dragons and trolls and stuff, fairies particularly are so close to human, they're almost human. They're very relatable, that there's a lot of experiences in them that we can relate to, and it makes them almost real. There's that little back piece of the back of your brain that can't ever quite give up believing that fairies are real. And they make, because they're so similar to us, they make a great mirror for us to hold up to ourselves, to see the things that we may not want to analyze in ourselves, to see the shadows and the lines. But we can look at it objectively because we're looking at fairies, we're not really looking at us. And I think for little kids, a lot of fairies are like, it's like they talked about in our panel. He said they're little children that never grew up. And I love that idea of fairies, and I think that's why they appeal to kids, because they have that freedom and that magic and that wonder.
We hear a lot of discussion about whether or not science fiction should inform and teach and discuss the big issues. Do you feel there's a place for that in urban fantasy and other fantasies?
I actually am, it's probably kind of sound rather snotty, but I actually think all literature should do that. I mean, I think everything should entertain, certainly. That's ultimately why everybody reads. That's why I got into books. I had a less than happy childhood, and for me, reading those stories gave me hope of escape. But I think even when that hope of escape, that's the lesson in it. It's addressing things that there's always a bit of hope on the other side. There's always that star they'll look forward to. There's always something else to reach out to. Things will always get better, no matter how bad they are. And even if that's the only lesson, that's still an important lesson. But I think every piece of literature should inform, it should teach, it should speak to things. I didn't even realize till after the fact, in The Forgotten are a group of changelings, or the half fairies, and they're all street kids, and they're ignored by the fake court. And I didn't even think about it at the time, but now as I'm looking back on it, that's a really good parallel to like biracial children that don't fit in with either side and nobody wants to take them, and things like that. It's the lessons are there, and it's not even has to be intentional for them to be found, because each individual reader's experience is going to be different. But I think the lesson should always be there. That's the sign to me of literature versus, a comic strip. A comic strip will make you laugh, and there may be a lesson to it, but all stories should teach you something at the end, even if it's something just about yourself.
Where are you taking the series now?
With The Forgotten, it addresses the reemergence of magic amongst mortals. That people have started to develop magic abilities, but they're all homeless street kids. And they're appearing all over the country, and nobody's sure why it's that group of kids. And Dante actually goes out to investigate and find out what's going on. So the main character in The Forgotten is crazy, and she is an unreliable narrator. So when you read what she's experiencing, you're not always sure if it's really happening. But she's also a wizard, so her grasp on reality isn't firm, but she can reshape reality anyway, so who's to say that her hallucinations aren't actually being made into reality? So I'm kind of tackling the whole premise of what is real, so small stuff. But I'm also tackling things, it's beginning to flesh out some of the characters. You learn a lot about the history of Dante, where he came from. You actually learn a little bit about the Krunic, the council that is in charge of the Fae. You find out that they didn't always have such a glamorous past either. You find some fairies that it talks about the downside to living inside humanity. Sure, there's the sports cars and the guns in Google, but humanity isn't always the best creature in the world either. And whereas the fairies between the Dawn Court and the Dusk Court have a very clear separation between the good and the bad, the Rogue Court is in the middle. When you live alongside humanity, that gray starts to blend. And maybe the good guys find out that they're not always so good, the bad guys find out they're not always so bad.
Well, thank you very much for taking some time to speak to us at New York Comic Con. We're looking forward to your next novel. And just quickly, are you having a good time at the show?
This has been absolutely mind-blowing for me. This is my first con on this side of things. The last con I went to was in San Diego in 1991 when I was still in high school, and this is like a completely different universe. I am having a ball. It's so great to meet other authors and to meet readers. This whole experience for me having a book out is still surreal, and I'm having such a great time, and thank you so much for the blog and for all the support you do for new authors and for this interview. It's been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.